Okay, we're rolling. Hello, Senior Rehab Podcast listeners. My name is Chris Hinze. I'm a physical therapist from Traverse City, and I'm joined here by a good friend of mine, a man by the name of Ty Schmidt. I've been lucky enough to serve on the board of a nonprofit that Ty founded a number of years ago, co-founded with his wife. And I'm going to let Ty introduce himself and tell us a little bit about this group called Norte.
Yeah, good morning, Chris, and welcome to the clubhouse.
It's great to be here.
Beautiful morning here in Traverse City, the Civic Center, in the heart of this amazing place we call home. And yeah, so Norte is something that really kind of came out of the blue, and one small idea led to this big organization, or at least fledgling organization, where we saw a need of kids not being able to walk or bike to school, and we tried something. We formed this network of bike trains that connect kids from their neighborhoods to neighborhood schools, and it kind of grew out from that. And now we administer safe routes to school programming across the area. We have a growing pro walk, pro bike advocacy group. We have a youth leadership council and a mountain bike team. So Norte is pretty diverse. We call us neighborhood-based, active transportation focused, and youth centered organization. So we're more than just kids on bikes. We're really talking about implementing movement into our ordinary lives.
Awesome. So you're a physiotherapist by background. Tell us a little bit about your physio background.
Yeah. So I graduated from the University of North Dakota in 1999.
The Bison?
The Fighting Sioux.
Fighting Sioux.
Formerly, now the Hawks. I could be wrong on that. The Fighting Hawks. And I got my MPT degree in 99, moved to Tucson. I was sick of the cold. I grew up in Canada. Went as far south as I could to get warm, and spent 8 years in outpatient rehab at a large hospital, St. Joe's Hospital. And it was phenomenal. Great experience, learned a lot. Got to be a part of their new emergency department PT program, and it was a great gig. And met my wife there, Johanna, in Tucson, who grew up here and had our first son, and then moved back. And again was a PT here at Munson for an outpatient setting for 8 years until I left this past fall to run Norte full time.
Awesome. So Norte is obviously super bicycle focused. So where did that passion, where did that love for the bicycle begin? I mean, is that something that started like in childhood?
Well, I think so. Like most of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have all great memories of ripping around town with our friends. And I grew up in a small town in Manitoba called Dauphin, a small farming town about 300 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg. But I think that childhood is very similar to our generation, right? Mm-hmm. To towns where kids can just go and be safe and have fun and go on adventures. So I think, it started there, and I think it grew, especially moving to Tucson. Tucson was a very, very bike-friendly town. And when I started working there, the traffic drove me nuts a bit. So I bought a $1,000 road bike and started commuting to work. It was about 18 miles one way, and I was fat and out of shape coming out of PT school. And that's kind of where this idea of bikes for transportation hooked me, because I was happier for it. I was healthier for it. I didn't have to sit in traffic all
mm-hmm. Right.
every morning and evening. So, and that's where it started. When I moved back to Traverse City, I gave up my driver's license because it's just something I didn't really need to do. I bought a home close to work, bought a home close to the grocery store and the library and downtown. So easier just to get around by bike.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's a great point. So I think being a true community health champion requires some role modeling, right? So I think you're a pretty strong example of that. I don't think I've ever seen you arrive anywhere not by bike.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, was that I think from what you just said, that was obviously a conscious decision. Is that something that you and your wife kind of agreed upon together based on your values?
Or was that it's just still a bit of a pain. I got two boys, and not being able to drive sometimes throws a wrench into plans.
Yeah. So how do you make that work? Like, how does your family...
Johanna's very patient.
Yeah.
And very understanding, and I try to be helpful in other ways at home.
Right.
Which I try to do every day. But I'm totally not anti-car. I love sitting in the minivan from time to time if I can't bike places. The winter is a challenge.
Right.
But again, I just plan my day around that, so, and sometimes it's convenient. I'm like, hey, I can't get to this meeting in 30 miles away,
Yeah.
sorry. But it's also convenient, and then I can get around town
Right.
wherever I need to be. So, 12 years without a driver's license, I think a lot of people, that's not unique. I think a lot of urban centers, people can do that. I think Traverse City being a little bit rural is sometimes a challenge, but, if it's within, 30 miles, I can bike there for the most part.
Awesome. So when we first started talking about Norte, you mentioned you identified kind of a community need for this type of organization or this type of movement. So tell us, what did you see 4 or 5 years ago before Norte really existed? I mean, what were you seeing as a community need that you thought you could help fill?
What I saw was when my oldest son Carter started school about 9 years ago, is I would bike him to school. He was in kindergarten, and so I would bike him to school, and what I saw was this insane car line wrapping around the school every single morning, and then every single afternoon at pickup, at dismissal. And what I also noticed was there was probably, a dozen kids walking and even fewer kids biking. And it seemed to me like the school was prioritizing this efficiently moving this car line through the parking lot, which almost acted like a barrier to kids, even if the kids wanted to walk or bike. It was like a Frogger game trying to connect them to the school. So that bothered me a bit. I then kind of went and scoped out other neighborhood schools and saw the exact same thing. So we decided to do something about it, and that was the kind of this need of just changing the conversation around how kids can arrive to and from school. It's not the school's fault. They're busy. They have other things to worry about. So I partnered with like-minded moms and dads and kind of did this bike train thing, which didn't really ask permission to do, but in the long run it turned out.
So now Norte, it's a lot more than just bike trains to school. Norte's programming list is massive in terms of the types of things Norte's doing, right? Balance bikes in preschools, after school bicycle adventure clubs, after school mountain bike teams. So how did Norte sort of evolve from bike trains to school into essentially a Traverse City's youth-centric physical activity programming and advocacy organization? How did that?
And it wasn't strategic, I'll tell you that much. It was totally organic, and I think what happened was we just started making friends with awesome people, and we started making friends with principals. Principals started seeing like, hey, these kids are arriving to school, ready to learn. They got the wiggles out. They got a little exercise in, and I think they started then supporting this idea of Safe Routes to School programming. So instead of it just being encouragement and bike trains, and I want to make clear that not every kid needs to arrive to school on a bike train. I think what it is it is social. Kids like to bike with their friends, and it is a teaching moment. Every bike train is we talk about safety and the rules of the road, and and how to be kind on the trails and street, and so that then led to these educational programs like the preschool Learn to Ride, like the Upper L bike safety, and then it just kind of took off from there, where we can't just be cheerleaders and champions, that we need to start advocating for safe infrastructure. So in comes this walk bike group, and then the recreational component of this mountain bike team is also very important to Norte, in that these kids not only ride bikes in the woods, but then they ride bikes to school, they ride bikes to the library, and then they start walking as well. I've since learned that walking is cool.
Right, walking's awesome. There you go.
I've totally turned into a walking nerd over the past 5 years, in that not everybody needs to bike if it's less than a mile. So Norte dropped the cycling from its name. We dropped the youth from its name. So now we're just Norte. It's still strange Spanish. We moved north from Tucson to Traverse City, but that's our organic growth over the past 5 years, and I think we're done inventing things. I think we have a solid plan, and I think it's pretty comprehensive.
So Norte's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So tell me about the decision to sort of go that route with Norte. When did that happen? How did you
Yeah, that
arrive
happened,
at that
and
model?
so we started this bike train model in the fall of 2013. I saw it like kind of take off across the city, and a light bulb went off, and I met with a few, my senior advisor Bob Otwell, who is the former director at Tart Trails here in Traverse City, and I asked him, does Traverse City need another nonprofit? We thought this through very long because we have literally 1,000 nonprofits in the area.
Yeah.
And do we need to go that route? But I think what we're doing was pretty unique.
Mm-hmm.
It was a ton of work, remains a ton of work,
Yeah.
fulfilling work though. But I had never known anything about running a nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
never sat on a board. I continue to learn every day about what it means to run a nonprofit. But I think that was transformative for us. So we wrote a grant, got a $1,000 Safe Routes to School grant from the National Partnership in the spring of 14, and then the next year we received a $25,000 grant from the Michigan Safe Routes to School.
Mm-hmm.
And without being a 501c3, that wouldn't have happened. So
Right.
that funding allowed growth.
Okay.
And I think it was 5 years later, I think it was the right call.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
So a little under a year ago, you made the decision to leave your job as a physio and come on board with Norte full time as executive director. So tell us just a little bit about what that decision was like for you and your family to kind of give up your PT career and dive into Norte full time.
It wasn't an easy decision.
Yeah.
We thought about it long and hard because I enjoyed being at the clinic and being at Munson. We job shared too, so I had a pretty great gig. I worked 20 hours a week. Johanna worked the mornings, and I worked the afternoons, and we've been doing that since Carter was born. So we've been doing that for 13 years. But it got to the point where I couldn't do both.
Mm-hmm.
Norte was taking off and requiring more and more time, and I always preach balance, and health and family, and it was getting to the point where it just wasn't healthy, to do both. And so after 8 years, and right as I was getting more and more benefits at work and getting good at what I was doing after 18 years, I decided to leave. But I think it was the right call, and I love coming to work every day. And to be honest, it's pretty much, I do the same thing here at the clubhouse as I do at the clinic. I'm just trying to encourage people to move more and sit less, to be active as part of ordinary life. And as a PT, like as I talk about with the education with parents and patients, walking was always just one of those things on my home exercise program.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do one thing, just try to sneak in a walk.
Right.
And so I do that every day here at the clubhouse.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think you're living the dream as far as a lot of physios go, especially, and I think there's a push right now for our profession to be a lot more health-facing and more involved in the community. And, some people just kind of dip their toe in, and then I think you're an example of, somebody who's literally gone all in. And so I just think it's pretty cool for people to.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and every day I'm like blessed and fortunate, and what a privilege to do this job. And I think being a PT gives a certain credibility. I think people sometimes ask, what gives you the authority to talk about this or do this? And as we teach, balanced bike skills and gross motor skills and coordination and reciprocal motion, those are the things that, when people see like, oh, okay, Ty has some training, he's been doing this a while. I think it gives some credibility to Norte. So
awesome. So I mean, Norte's had obviously a lot of growth over the last 5 years. So what, 2.5 staff members now? 2 physical locations, programming literally all over the city. So success has been great. I mean, looking back, is there anything that maybe you wish you would have done differently? Is there
tons.
So I mean, is there a direction that you wish you would have taken that you didn't, or an opportunity?
Well, I think I've made so many mistakes over the years. I mean, from, I don't know about direction, I think, but like we used to make the kids bike to school in the winter with bike trains. I'm like, we're all biking through the year, I don't care. That was not a great idea. But then in comes Winter Walk Wednesdays, right?
Yeah,
and that again transformed Norte. And I used to be I thought walking was nerdy, right? I'm like, why walk? It takes forever. So in comes Winter Walk Wednesdays. 700 kids show up for Traverse City Walks to School Day. So I think embracing walking was something I would do right away.
Okay.
I think being careful to be too overly youth centric. I think that I've also realized that we need to make sure that grandmas move and millennials are
Right,
active.
right.
I think that it's not inclusive to kids in elementary, middle school. So that would be something I would start right off the bat too.
Because Norte does kind of still have, I don't want to call it a branding issue, but it's certainly, the community still sees it as a youth-focused
Right.
effort, even though we do so much
Right.
to engage folks of all ages. I mean, from the free bike valets at the farmers market to the bike share at the film festival to TC rides every Wednesday. I mean, there are a lot of events that look to attract people of all ages. But it is still kind of has that stigma, right? That it's just for kids.
But that's what I mean, and that's where we started. It was Norte Youth Cycling.
Yeah.
And
right,
so
right.
that would be something that I would do differently.
But I think advocacy-wise, we can leverage that, because when we start talking about kids and safety,
for sure.
I think that hits a soft spot for
Totally.
just about everyone.
It's hard to say no to.
Exactly. So I mean, there are some positives to being kind of youth-focused as well. But
yeah, no, and it's good. I think we're starting them young and teaching them right, and hopefully will grow up and take those skills into adulthood and into wherever community they go to, and kind of be the change there.
Right. So there seems to have been a push this year, especially for Norte, to have a little bit greater focus on equity, right? So Norte had a big focus this year on getting more girls involved in our programming. Girls on Bikes was big. We started a adaptive balance bike program for kids with disabilities. There was a big push or a larger push for more scholarship opportunities for kids this year. So just tell us a little bit about that decision. I mean, was that based on, again, kind of a needs assessment? Was that just based on feedback from the community? What sort of brought that change along for Norte this year?
Well, and I think that came about because I saw we were reaching the same families. Week after week, month after month, and I'm like, who really needs this, and how can we reach them? And so those things that you just rattled off, I would also add that we have some underserved schools, even in very affluent Traverse City, kids who lack the resources, to have bikes or the opportunities to have positive experiences. So we've partnered with Traverse Heights Elementary with our bike library, and we provide that bike safety programming for free. We've partnered with East Middle with their families, who their counselors will call and say, hey, this family needs bikes, and we will bend over backwards to get them transportation. So I think the equity part of it's been going really well, and I think we have a lot more to do, especially as we get outside of the core of Traverse City, out into the rural areas. So that's what's next. I'm excited that we're going to partner with all of our public school elementaries this fall. And where the kids are in school, so I'm excited to have a presence there.
For sure. So looking ahead, maybe 5-10 years from now, I mean, Norte's seen a lot of growth in the last 5. If you were to look 5 to 10 years forward, I mean, where do you see Norte positioned 5-10 years from now?
Well, I think what we want to do is get out of Traverse City. I think what we want to do is, and we've started projects in Elk Rapids and Norrisport, and I've always said there's nothing that we've done here that can't be replicated elsewhere, because I believe that change makers exist everywhere, and if you provide them the platform and a stage to be that change, I think they can. So I want Norte to provide the tools and the resources for people to start talking about active transportation and communities based around people in place. And to take Norte from 1,000 kids to 10,000 kids and families. So, and that just comes down to strategic. Now we're trying to be a little bit more thoughtful and where we want to go. And thank you for being a part of that. But I think we're getting there. I think we're taking over a new building that will help with space and to grow the programs. So 10 years from now, I think so. I think we can have a presence in the region, not just in Traverse City.
Awesome. So a couple of listener questions that Dustin sent to me. I'll just kind of fire those at you. I think the first one we've kind of just talked about throughout, but the first one is how can I impact my community outside of the walls of my clinic. So if a physio were to kind of come up and ask you that question, what might you say to that?
Well, and I would have a great answer, because what we've started, I would look for a nonprofit that speaks to you.
Yeah.
And this Amigos, this weekly adaptive bike program for kids with special needs now, which happens here at Thursdays, is now, and I'm proud to say this, we have like 6 PTs come
Awesome.
and help these kids learn to ride.
Nice.
And they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and to see them be here brings, you know, I think it's fulfilling for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good for the kids, and it's
Right.
certainly really good for Norte. So I've now reaching out to them all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing if they want to be a part of that. I think they're great for our with our you know, teaching the mechanics of balance bike
Yeah.
riding.
Yeah.
And I think that, so I you know, nonprofits doing amazing work.
Yeah.
And it's not just Norte.
Sure.
You know, I think it's happening all over. So just find somebody that speaks to you and get involved.
Cool. So Mark Rubenstein in New Jersey had a question. He said, what are suggested steps to implement some of the successful projects or programs that you or Norte has implemented? So that's kind of a pretty broad question probably for Norte at this point. But like, I mean, if you were to take like maybe an example of like maybe the bike trains or Estrellas, which is a really successful program for Norte, our preschool balance bike program. I mean, how do you take sort of a program idea or a project idea from idea to a successful program?
Right.
I mean, what do those steps look like?
Yeah, well, and you know, and we're getting there right now.
Yeah.
We're trying to provide those best practice steps to replicate some of these things in other communities. But what I've learned is, again, to make friends with awesome people, you cannot do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and to start small and dream big, and to make sure it's sustainable and not a flash in the pan.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's something that I think will give you some longevity
Mm-hmm.
and some
Mm-hmm.
sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
and to have some credibility in the community. I think you need to be reliable and consistent,
Yeah.
and people to look at you
Keep
and
showing up, right?
and keep showing up.
Yeah.
You know, and every program Norte has done, we've started like with 3 kids. And it's thanks to people who care and are passionate about it.
Yeah.
So like when we're going to other communities, you know, I recruited like 6 to 8 people, and they said, I'm going to give you 2 years of my life,
Yeah.
and to help implement this in the community. And I think once you get that buy-in from folks, just keep showing up and plugging away, and then, you know, and then learn from your mistakes, because inevitably you're going to make some mistakes along the way.
For sure. So a couple of rapid fire questions. If we've got a few minutes left. You have time?
Yes,
You good? All right.
let's do it.
So what's the first 2 hours of your day look like?
Man, well, I get my boys ready for school.
Okay.
Johanna's working early now, so I get them breakfast and ready to start their day, and then I hustle over here to the clubhouse. It's a 90-second bike ride for me, so
Yeah.
I'm super lucky that way. And then I usually get ready. Right now we're getting ready for summer bike camp, and then unfortunately I get on my computer and tap the computer for a couple hours.
Tap. So no like regular morning routine, you know, or
Well, okay, yeah. So yes, I drink coffee, I read the paper, I stretch. I usually go for a run.
Okay.
You know, in there.
And that's all before you get your kids ready for school?
Yes. So I
Okay.
get up early. I usually get up around 6, do a few push-ups, pull-ups, and that's my morning.
Awesome. What book are you reading right now?
Oh gosh, I'm such a bad reader. My reading is so poor. I'm going to say that I just read. I'm trying to read a lot of leadership books. I can't remember the title of the book, but I struggle with being a good leader. Man, you know, now I have a team,
Mhm.
and so I've been reading a lot of leadership books.
Cool. I think this is maybe a trick question for you, but what's your favorite TV show?
Oh gosh, I don't have a TV, but I do watch Netflix,
Yeah.
and I just watched Dexter. It was so good, although
Awesome.
the season finale was awful.
Awesome. What kind of bike do you ride most of the time?
I ride a big dummy made by Surly. It's a station wagon. I put all my stuff in there, and it's my go-to bike now.
That's your hauler, huh?
That's my hauler.
Awesome. All right, that's all I got. Anything else you want to
No,
throw out there?
this is awesome.
This is cool.
This is
All
so
right.
good. Thanks for coming and
Yeah,
having me,
yeah.
and thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for the chat.
Cool.
Cool.